Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I rank the best hockey card designs for 1994. When I was going through this list, I was surprised at the fact that, for me, I felt that this was the first time that I saw a best of hockey list where I looked at all the cards and went, yeah, these are all pretty good. Hockey, unfortunately, is a place that card companies had a difficult time really wrapping their heads around because of the fact that, well, hockey images are difficult to work with to really make cards work well. And one of the benefits that hockey had in 1994 was we were starting to see a lot more templating where a card design was designed in a specific way that was used across different sports. That can be both a blessing and a curse, but if you design it right, then the ideas of one sport can carry across to another sport as long as you're deft enough to know how to make adjustments for the sport in terms of the image selection primarily, but also if you have good designers, they're looking at all the different designs across all the sports and figuring out how to coalesce those ideas into one. And so there's a bit of that went on in this list here. But I also feel that they were just getting a lot better at things like image selection and figuring out how to make images and players read on these cards. That said, the place where I start this list off is something that actually doesn't fit on this list, which is the Parkhurst, well, the two Parkhurst retro cards. Because Parkhurst was now, Upper Deck was in their second year of making Parkhurst, and they wanted to take advantage of a weird opportunity where in the 1960s, Parkhurst, the original Parkhurst company, they missed 1 year of making cards. So Upper Deck went, well, hey, why don't we make what that card set would have been like? And there are two card sets that they created. They created their Tall Boy Parkies cards, and they created their Missing Link cards. And these two cards are true retro cards, but to their credit, they designed these cards literally like they would have been at the time, all the way down to where the cards don't even have crisp clarity like you would see in a retro card in the mid-90s. Beyond that, they made these cards with the original kind of cardstock. So unlike Topps Archives, where the cards were modern glossy cards, here, this really did feel like you were picking up a card, or you were opening up a pack that had been sitting around for 30 years. It really did have that quality to it. And so the cards have a great quality in terms of the feel, the look, and the design is awesome. They don't fit this list, but I can't leave it off the list. I really love these cards. So great that they did that. But I do have two honorable mentions that are cards that I think are strong. I think they're good. I don't think they're great. But they're also cards that can't really be great by their very nature. The first one is Stadium Club. And the fact that I have a Stadium Club on the best of list is already pretty interesting because Stadium Club in the prior to 1996, Stadium Club, they never quite figured out how to make the card look great. They had a kind of an edgy look in their first year, but past that, they were just kind of playing around with some, well, they didn't know what they were doing. And it wasn't until 1996 that they ever really got it down. But I got to give them credit. In hockey in 1994, they went with a particular theme and they nailed it because they figured out how to make it work. And the theme was very, very upfront images of players. Not all of them are really tight shots like you see with Pavel, but even with the ones where they aren't really tight in there, there's still a big strength to each one of the images. And when you have this much power of the image, you need to back the design off and because you don't want to fight the image with a design. Otherwise, it limits the ability for the image to really work. And what they figured out in Topps here with Stadium Club was you just add a couple of little bursts of color. You have one up at the top with the logo, you have one down at the bottom with the player name, so that when you look at the card, the burst of color lets you know, I'm here, but I'm not going to bother you. So when you do want to look at who the player is, you can see that, but it's not an issue. It's a really good balance. They actually pulled it off. The problem is, it's not a catchy card. It is an interesting card, it's an engaging card, but it's better for people who are not even team collectors, player collectors. It's a card that stands out on an individual basis of this is part of the collection and it's pretty cool. And yes, it is. So they pulled off what they were trying to do. It's just that what they were trying to do is inherently limited. Flair, on the other hand, was a card design that was designed for team collectors, set collectors, and player collectors, all three. And it still does work for player collectors, but not so much for team and for set collectors, because the design concept itself is built on superimposing two images one on top of the other. And in 1993, they pulled it off because they put care into it. In 1994, there was not as much care put into baseballs to the point where the cards were too busy. Basketball, they did a pretty good job, mainly on individual cards. Hockey as well turned out pretty well. It's got bright colors, but they also figured out how to select two different images that don't fight each other, but they more complement each other. So when you look at the card, you see both images of the player, it reads well. And the strength of the card carries across really well. They're not great images, or they're not great cards, obviously, but they're really strong cards and they look good. So for what they were trying to do, these cards work well, as long as you don't look at the back. But neither of them are really great cards, in part because they don't really have much in terms of design. They're relying too much on the images, and when the images work, awesome. When they don't work, well, there's nothing else left for you. The top five, though, these all do have a clear design, and it starts off with Finest. And Finest I have a tough time with because, well, for 1994, this card is actually pretty decent. They have a lot of interesting things going on in the image, but the border is left alone, and unfortunately in 94, they have really muted, heavy colors on the borders that just kind of drag the thing down. I don't even really want to go into this. I just want to say they were getting close. This had most of what it needed to be successful. I just wish that it had the rest. So overall, I think that design-wise, it works better than the ones we saw before, simply because it does have a design. And if the image isn't strong, the card is still there for you. But past that, this one is I'm kind of torn with this. Now, Topps was pretty successful with their Topps Premier or O-Pee-Chee Premier, where this card is basically a perfectly fine to really good basic card. This is about as basic as you're going to find a card. White border on the outside does a really good job of allowing the image inside to pop out because of the way they were selecting images. But at the same time, it also provides a really clean card so that the team color fade down at the bottom, that box, is able to do the work it's supposed to do. It's strong, it stands out, it's not battling with anything, which allows this card to be just a really clean, straightforward card that's all about the player. That's what I like about the card. It's not interesting, it's not exciting, it's not dynamic, it doesn't do any of that stuff. But for a basic card, you don't want that. This is about the player. That's the whole point of a basic card brand. And they pulled that off with this card. So I really like how that worked. Now at number 3, we're shifting over to Upper Deck. We're going back to Parkhurst with the actual Parkhurst set. And in this case, you're now seeing the Upper Deck was really getting down this borderless design concept. In this case, they put the most intricate work into creating a card that has a lot of dynamic qualities going on that makes the card an interesting experience. And it doesn't start at the top, rather it starts at the bottom with that dark fade at the bottom, which it allows a grounding element which allows the rest of the card to be kind of rising up from it, which is a great concept. But it also creates almost the feeling of a border while also allowing the image to run off. A little bit of gold foil, or silver foil in most cases, on the card for just a punch of interest. Really great. Then you go to the counterpoint and you have the logo and you have the banner that comes down. And those work beautifully countered to each other because they frame the image and allow the image to either pop out or more correctly to get you to start looking across all three components. You have both elements on either side, and then that draws your eye through the image, which gets you to pay attention to the image. And these images don't tend to be as clear and distinct as we saw in the Premier cards, which means that with busier images, you need to take the time. And that's where this card is really strong. The card design makes up for the image, and it helps the image, which is what a border should do. And for a borderless card, they actually figured this out really well. I like it. I think it's really good. It's definitely not top 2 though, because with top 2, we got to go from Upper Deck over to Upper Deck but with SP. And I give them so much credit here with SP because I'm going to give you a little bit of foreshadowing. In basketball, I'm not a fan of the gold on gold SP cards. But in hockey, I think it works great. And here's the reason. In basketball, there's too much going on. And the gold, the delicacy of the gold gets lost with the busyness of the image. But in hockey, you tend to have ice and the boards down low, which means there's a lot of white. And the white works so well with the gold foil, which allows the intricacy, the delicacy, the satiny finish of the gold foil to read beautifully. And the gold foil has almost a frosty quality. Not quite like you would see with silver, but silver would be kind of redundant. So instead here, all the things that are necessary for the gold on gold foil to work are happening. And that makes this card really succeed well. They also had a tendency to select good images, which meant that this card was a wonderful success of what they were trying to do. And for hockey, this is actually one of the strongest cards. It really is. There is a little bit of interest that's not there. And that's why it's at number 2, whereas at number 1, where we go with Upper Deck proper. Now this has it all. It has the full bleed images are well selected here. The colors are so rich. They did a great job of selecting images. Over on the side, you have a touch of gold foil. You have the darkened area at the top, which allows the image to run off. And then you have the team color fade down at the bottom. All of that works beautifully with these cards. Now, Upper Deck didn't figure out how to make these cards well with baseball, but when they got around to football, they had figured out this design, and the football cards look great. The basketball cards look good too, but I think that hockey is probably where these cards are the strongest, and it comes from mainly from the colors that come through on the images. But also, there's a cleanliness that I feel with this that I did feel with SP, but here there's something different about it where there's a rich, heavy quality to the card design that works well with images that aren't really all that light and fluffy, but there's I feel like there's detail that I'm really picking up on that makes this card work so well. I love looking through this card set. I absolutely love it. And it's rare for me to isolate a hockey set and say, this is awesome, I love it. But this is a rare case where, to me, hockey, I think Upper Deck nailed the hockey cards better than any other sport. They certainly nailed the Upper Deck design above all the competition. And so that's what I have as the best hockey card design of 1994. So let me know in the comments below your take, whether you think that my list, or how I've ordered these in the list is good. Let me know about that. If you haven't subscribed, I do urge you to do so, and check out my other videos. And thank you very much for watching.